Hi everyone, so let's now take a look at the demand curve. So when it comes to demand, it's really important to understand that we will see this present whenever there is a market taking place. Now markets of course are everywhere, and they simply represent where buyers and sellers actually come together to engage in some sort of transaction. Now in such a scenario, buyers will provide the demand, of course, so consumers often represent those buyers. They will provide the demand for given goods and services, but of course you may see businesses buying, for instance, capital goods, buying supplies as well, and that's fine as well. Okay, so more often than not though, buyers will be consumers. Okay, and they provide the demand while sellers will actually provide the supply, and those sellers of course are going to be individual firms and larger businesses providing that level of supply. Now you can see I've just drawn out price and quantity demanded table here. Okay, so we've got 4, 8, 16, 24 in terms of pricing. Meanwhile we can see the quantity demanded actually falls as the price level increases, and this is of course what we would generally expect, that if the price is higher then demand for a product will be lower. Okay, now let's take a look at this with our little graph that we can draw out here. Now you can see on my y-axis I've drawn out the price level, on our x-axis we've got quantity demanded here. Okay, so if we then just plot in each of our corresponding points, we can see at a price level of 4, well we've got a quantity demanded of 8. Okay, if we increase the price now to 8, well we can see that the quantity demanded falls to just 4. Okay, meanwhile a price rise up to 16 would then see a further fall in demand to 2, and up to 24 would reduce demand down to 1. Okay, so let's just draw those points together so that we can see the actual shape of this demand curve. I'm just going to label that with the D there as well, representing our demand. Okay, so this is interesting. We can see it's got a negative slope. Okay, so there is a negative or inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay, so that simply means that if the price goes down, quantity demanded will increase. So do make a note there that you have a negative slope. There is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay, so that's really important to be aware of. We also see the opposite scenario, that if price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. Okay, now the demand curve shows effective demand though. Okay, that's worth noting. We've seen that people have unlimited wants, and therefore they always would like to be able to buy more. You'd like to buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, but can you truly afford it? If you can't, well you don't have effective demand. This demand curve really represents a scenario where people have got the available money. Do they actually decide to actually engage in such a transaction? And at what level would they actually begin to purchase? So this demand curve actually illustrates demand that is effective. It can be backed up by people's real spending power. Okay, now the demand curve slopes downwards for 2 reasons. Okay, firstly, number one, there's a substitution effect. Okay, so there is a substitution effect that high prices will mean consumers move to substitute products. So if you just consider a scenario such as the price of Jerome weeds and the price of pasta therefore rising, if the price of pasta goes up quite significantly, then of course what's likely to happen is that people start to actually buy alternative products, whether it's bread, whether it's rice products. Okay, so consumers will substitute away from that given product to other alternatives. And secondly, that there's also an income effect as well, and that income effect really means that at higher prices you can afford to buy less. At lower prices you can afford to buy more of a given good. Okay, so price rises relative to people's incomes, if assuming that people's incomes are not changing, means people can afford less of a given good and vice versa. So that's important to just understand there, that if the price is low, then you can afford to buy more. In essence, you have more real spending power, okay? Your disposable income in real terms has increased, even though your nominal income may not have changed. Okay, so finally, let's just finish off by just considering what a movement along the demand curve represents, because in our next lesson we'll look at some shifts in demand. If I just pick out a different colour here, imagine that the firm begins to actually charge a price level of 24, not knowing what price they should really be charging. So they charge 24, and you can see they only sell one product. So they decide to actually reduce their price. As they reduce their price, that is simply a movement along the demand curve. It is simply a change in price. We see this all the time when it comes to sales in high street stores, that they just reduce the price level. As they reduce the price level, you can see the quantity demanded changes. If they further change their price level from 16 down through to 8, well, we can see there is going to be another increase in quantity demanded. But this is all to do with our current demand curve. There is nothing else which is giving rise to a new demand curve being created. It's not as if there's been a really successful promotional campaign, or that there's a new element to the product, or a new function, a new use which has been introduced. So we don't see any shifts. We just see movement along the demand curve when there is a price reduction. And that's important to note. Alright guys, thanks ever so much for watching. See you next time.